Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. Donating at least 100,000 to Irish football via England goals this summer. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Very good morning and welcome along to another episode of the Euro 2020 show here on Off the Ball. Shane Hannon with you for the next week. We have 3 more episodes after today, so Tuesday, Wednesday and Friday, and then next Monday we'll have an episode, the final episode, to look back on the final, of course, which takes place this coming Sunday, and we'll look back at the tournament as a whole as well. We're live in the usual places this morning as well. OTB Sports Radio on the OTB Sports app. You can download that if you haven't already in the App Store or the Play Store. We're also live as well on video as per usual on the live stream, youtube.com/Off the Ball, on Facebook and indeed on Twitter at Off the Ball as well. And our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. So 4 more goals against Ukraine added €40,000 to the kitty for Irish football. So a positive from England's win in Rome at the weekend. So €80,000 total so far for Irish football, thanks to England's 8 goals at the Euros. 1 more week to go, so 4 more episodes, as I said. Damien Delaney will be with me very shortly and on this morning's show. But it is time to welcome, first of all, our own team OTB's Nathan Murphy. Morning, Nathan.
Hi, Shane.
Keeping well, Nathan?
Are you keeping well? Because I'll tell you, that voice is sounding a bit groggy. It must have been a late one, was it, Saturday night, celebrating all those English goals?
Celebrating.
I know what they're like in Monaghan. Secret English fans up there.
This is the thing, yeah. Like, it's getting quite close now. I had to celebrate on Saturday night, of course, after Gareth Southgate and co did the business. But, like, I was, I guess, pessimistic about England's chances towards the start of the tournament. Didn't even think they'd beat Germany. And now, given the actual quality in their performance against Ukraine, it could be coming home, Nathan.
Yeah, it should be coming home, really. 2 home matches, semi-final and final. The form team in the tournament, Harry Kane, bit of confidence. Raheem Sterling, arguably the outstanding player in the tournament so far. Yeah, it could well be coming home. And it's a difficult one to figure out because they're an incredibly likeable bunch of players. They've got a manager who very grounded, down to earth, who does the right thing. The players we've seen over the last year, 18 months, have shown huge leadership around England and in all manner of things. But then you think, as Eamon Dunphy said, you think of Boris Johnson and Privy Patel and these despicable people using this team to celebrate something that it's not. And even for that reason, which is harsh on the players and our age-old rivalry, of course. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the BBC coverage? And you can't blame them. Listen, we would be just as bad. But my God, it would be insufferable.
I can't. And like, I almost wish the England manager was less likeable. Like, I really like Gareth Southgate, which makes it quite difficult for me to want England to lose. And I do want them to lose, but look, it's tough. It's
hard to imagine, you see, how crazy it could get if they win and the insane ideas that will follow. So someone will come up with the idea that maybe all the England players should get a guard of honour when they walk onto the pitch in the first Premier League match back. Like, that is something that will happen. That is something that people will be suggested, that when Harry Kane comes out at the Etihad or at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, whichever one it is, for his first match, everybody else should stand back and applaud his greatness.
They'll get statues. Like, Raheem Sterling should get a statue probably if he leads them to the Euros, but like, I like the build up to each game with England is always just crowned with 1966 and 96 and the penalty misses and whatever else. But at this stage, they've just lost the run of themselves. Like, even after the Germany win, they were just gone. That was it. It was coming home, and now it's...
But you're allowed to lose the run of themselves.
True.
You're allowed to lose the run of yourselves. That is what international football is about. They're in a semi-final at Wembley. They've just crushed Ukraine 4-0. My view on their winning of the tournament hasn't really changed from Saturday night. Ukraine were one of the worst teams in the tournament. Had a little bit of nous in them from somebody like Yarmolenko, but came through a really weak group just about on the basis of 1 win over North Macedonia. If Ireland were there, we would have expected to beat North Macedonia. Had that 1 victory. I don't know how they beat Sweden, a really bang average Sweden side. So this was as straightforward a quarterfinal as any team could ever imagine. It was the equivalent of the French demolishing Iceland back in 2016. So the main plus wasn't the victory, the scoreline. I think it was that Kane has kicked on, looks now like a player who you wouldn't at all be surprised if he went and scored another 2 or 3 goals over the next couple of matches and somehow finished as top scorer, despite all the criticism and everybody saying that he should be dropped. So listen, I still think they should have too much for Denmark. It'll be a far tighter, closer game, but Denmark don't have the class that England have, and then Italy or Spain in the final. Like, that will be a final to remember if England are there, because that should be a cracking game.
Yeah, like even watching the golf last night, Nathan, to speak in your own language, like Joaquin Niemann, no bogeys through the 4 days of the tournament, and then the first playoff hole he gets a bogey. Like, Italy are that team that have not bogeyed so far in this tournament. I'm just worried that their moment of ineptitude is to come. Now, you might say, look, Austria took them to extra time, but they've been fairly flawless. Can they keep it up?
Who's Troy Merritt in this then, who I backed at 125 to 1 and end up losing in the fifth hole of the playoff? Our good friend of the Golf Weekly podcast, Troy Merritt. I can't believe you brought that up. It was 12:30 when I went to bed and I'm still sickened. So your point is that Italy, everything has gone so right for them so far and away.
It's been birdies and pars.
You can say that about England as well. That like they haven't. Okay, that maybe the game against Scotland they didn't perform, but they haven't had a massive in-game setback as of yet that they've really had to recover from. And likewise, like Italy, they were pushed on Friday night. Like, what a cracking game! The first 45 minutes of that you did not want to end. So they've beaten the best team in the world by world rankings and beaten them well. So. There's a million different ways you can win these tournaments. Look at Portugal. Look at what Fernando Santos did 5 years ago. Even Spain have won major tournaments with the greatest international team we've seen in the modern age and didn't crush everybody. So it's just about getting the job done. And England, Italy, the four teams that are there have done that in different ways. There's no right way or wrong way. And all these games, semi-finals, will take on a life of their own, and something will happen that we didn't expect. And Italy have an injury to Spinazzola now. Is that going to unsettle them in some way because he's been maybe the best player in the tournament so far? Yeah, my predictions haven't been great so far in general, and they're going to be very watery for these two semi-finals.
Yeah, it's tough to call. Like, I have a sneaky feeling about Denmark. Like, they were impressive against Wales. They were fairly decent against the Czech Republic as well, although Patrick Schick pulled the goal back to make it a little bit more nervy than it needed to be. But this Danish team will not be easy for England to. As you mentioned, Ukraine are brutal. So Denmark are far superior to what Denmark will offer, or to what Ukraine offered.
Completely. But as good as Denmark have been, they are without their one world-class player in Christian Eriksen, and they have shown tremendous spirit, and they've shown more than that, because I was one of those, and there was a few of us, so I can't claim total credit, who really had them as my dark horse for the tournament, because of the draw and the way the draw was worked out, and there was always an opportunity that they might get a favourable run through the tournament. But also, we've seen Denmark so many times and how solid they are at the back, and Kjær and Christensen, Thomas Delaney in midfield, the base that he gives them there as well. And at the time, we presumed Eriksen was going to be there to add that little bit of star power. But there's a real energy to them. And like, they made a big decision not long ago to get rid of Aga Harida, who had the better of Ireland, that's for sure. Went with a change in style. I was over in Denmark, I think, for the 3 matches, and they weren't a fan of their style of play. Like, they thought those games were as dull as ours, even though they looked the better side. They felt there was a lot more to come from the Danish side. They brought that. They're a real attacking threat, and they will ask a lot more questions of England than Ukraine. But 1-11, England are better than this Danish side, and it would still be a major shock if the Danes could pull it off. But maybe there is something there. Maybe there's a spirit there that England just can't tackle, and they're back in Wembley, and the pressure and the 60,000. Like, this is... I know some of these English players have played in the Champions League final just a month or so ago. This is going to be the biggest game of their lives.
Oh, hugely. And to have that advantage of Wembley is massive, and the fans as well. Like, Gareth Southgate was even talking about they were quite glad to get to Rome after the Germany game, because the hype and the atmosphere in Wembley for the Germany game was just incredible, or looked incredible. And then almost to get this flight to Rome, away from the hustle and bustle of London and the pressure and focus, to get that trip away, it probably helped them. Now they can come back and focus, and as you said, like, if they can win a European Championships on home soil, I mean, this is huge. This is huge. And the other thing as well that has impressed me about Gareth Southgate is the fact that Phil Foden came into this tournament as the guy we were all talking about. This is going to be the young player that everyone needs to watch, and he hasn't really had much of an input whatsoever. Like, it's been other players. That probably shows the strength and depth, and also the bravery in Gareth Southgate's team selection as well.
He's got everything spot on so far. Like, I know John Giles was on yesterday, and when I was talking to him on Thursday, feels that he hasn't settled on his starting 11, and you have to have settled on a starting 11. Like, he's mixed and matched, and he's brought in freshness, and he has gone for horses for courses when he's felt he needed 3 at the back, like against Germany. It has worked. When Foden at times in the first half in the opening game against Croatia was probably their best player, but hasn't had the impact it would want. Like, Jack Grealish didn't even get on the last night, and nobody's questioning it. And you saw the embrace at the end, where I'm sure Southgate was telling him, "You're going to have a big role for me at some stage." I'm sure Grealish is looking around going, "Like, how has Jadon Sancho been picked ahead of me?" Considering Sancho barely played so far, but Sancho was brilliant. So is he going to change it again? Does he change his fullbacks? Does he add a bit more freshness, or does he decide now with 2 games to go, I know what my best 11 is? I wouldn't be surprised again if he went with a similar formation for Denmark as he went against Ukraine, and then went 3 at the back in the final. So whatever he's done has worked. But that is what happens in major tournaments. If you're winning games, you're not questioned. The problem with being England manager is, at this stage, the hype is so great. If you were to lose a semi-final or even a final, the criticism is going to sting. One thing that I think also maybe changes the dynamic for a lot of these managers is that the World Cup is only 18 months away.
Yeah.
So, Southgate is very safe. The players want to be around for a World Cup. If you're not getting your opportunity right now, it's not that long to go until a World Cup, so there's going to be no throwing toys out of the pram. It's not just a European Championship. If they win the European Championship, they'll think they can win a World Cup. So, I think Southgate, it's every time you look at the team news come in, which seems to be leaked out the day before, you go, "Well, I wasn't expecting that." Slight change, bringing somebody new in, but like, they must be one of the freshest teams in the tournament right now. Yeah,
there's always a surprise in that England starting 11, which is great. Like, I know how Gareth Southgate must feel, Nathan. It's quite tough to pick a good starting 11, and that brings us on nicely to my starting 11 for the team of the tournament, the Rolling All-Stars. So this was my team as of... Now, bear in mind, this formation is all over the place. I've picked 4 defenders. You'll see Spinazzola there in centre of defence. Forget that. He's just a defender, so he's in the defence. Jan Sommer for Switzerland in goals. This was my last team at the start of the weekend. Dumfries for the Netherlands still was in right back. Spinazzola, Vermaelen and Zinchenko across the back line. Midfield, I had Ferran Torres, Paul Pogba, Granit Xhaka and Raheem Sterling. And up front, Cristiano Ronaldo and Schick. So I've made a few changes, 4 changes in all. Dumfries is out in place of Simon Kjær. He's finally out. But Simon Kjær, he's just been a huge presence in this Danish side. He had to come in at some point. Thomas Vermaelen also out. He was fairly poor against the Italians, and Giorgio Chiellini has replaced him. Like, threw his body at everything later on in that game, and the celebrations for every blocked tackle for the Italians just made it so exciting to watch. Granit Xhaka is out. He was suspended for that last game anyway against Spain, and Pedri comes in. Pedri's been fairly solid throughout the tournament, I think. And Zinchenko out for Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw had to come in, so he's across the... I've got 2 left backs. Don't be picking holes in this team, Nathan, because I know it's not ideal. It's not an 11 that would gel too well together, but still, Spinazzola and Shaw, I couldn't leave either of them out, really. So it's a fairly decent team, I think you'll agree. You won't agree.
So just the 2 Manchester United players and 1 former Manchester United. Could you not squeeze a few more in there?
You wanted Wijnaldum or some Liverpool boys in there, did you?
No. I think I think it's a solid team. Sommer's definitely been the best goalkeeper in the tournament so far. Pedri, like, at 18, what Pedri is doing in that Spanish side, hasn't been rewarded for a lot of his brilliant play, because Morata and Morena are so off it and have wasted so many opportunities. Looks an absolute superstar. So I think he is fully deserving of his place. I think Declan Rice is very close to that team. Very close to that team. He hasn't put a foot wrong in the tournament so far, and he's probably playing within himself at the request of his manager. He's just doing what his side needs him to do. Again, Harry Maguire, since he came back from the early injury that ruled him out, has been practically flawless. I think maybe Barella for the Italians.
Yeah, Nicolo Barella, fair point.
Maybe in there ahead of Ferran Torres.
Yeah,
I think he's been the pick of the Italian midfielders so far, and I know Ronaldo's got 5 goals, and
it's the only reason he's still there. Like, if Kane overtakes him, Kane goes in. Simple as that. Which he might.
Really? You're not looking at more than just the goals. You're not looking at the overall play throughout the tournament.
I'm all about the goals. I was a centre forward myself back in the day, Nathan. Just hit the onion bag. 5 goals and 1 assist for Ronaldo. Look, I don't think he'll be in my final team. I think he's going to come out at some point. But like, Lorenzo Insigne is probably a bit unlucky. Jorginho's been good. Sergio Busquets has had a good tournament.
I think Kevin De Bruyne has been brilliant when he's played.
True. True. Yeah, it's tough to. Look, it's not an easy thing to pick an 11. I completely empathise with Gareth Southgate, because it's not easy to be a manager. I've got abuse on YouTube, and continue that abuse on YouTube, please, for my brutal 11. The team determined.
It's getting better. It's getting better.
Getting there.
I'm not having Ferran Torres in there.
Fair.
Get him out.
One upset is not too different. Like, I left Harry Maguire out in Manchester United man as well, so at least he'll probably sneak into that team if England make a final, I have to say. Damien Delaney, former Republic of Ireland international defender, is with us now on the show. Morning, Damien.
Morning, Shane. How are you?
Keeping well. You said you wanted England to kind of progress past Germany, progress past Ukraine, and then for your boys Denmark to do them in a semi-final. It's set up perfectly, Damien.
Absolutely. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I was just listening to you lads talking there about getting guards of honour and stuff. They're still a long way from winning this tournament. They haven't come up against a real form team. They'll probably have to wait till the final to come up against a superpower that's in form in Italy, most likely. And then I'll give them the credit, because their run in 2018 World Cup wasn't the greatest or the toughest. And their run to here, with the exception of Germany, a fading Germany that weren't in a fantastic place. But ultimately, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and they do deserve a certain amount of credit. But they come up against the Danish team at the moment that were, pre-tournament, a pretty decent outfit. But I think the emotion of what happened to them, the togetherness, the bond, when a team has been through such an emotional roller coaster that they've been through, there's a certain amount of feeling or empathy for each other, and they are running through brick walls at the moment. And it's going to be no easy feat for them to overcome Denmark. They're going to go up against a really, really tough team that are playing for more than just football. They're playing for each other, they're playing for their country, but they truly have been special this tournament.
Like, I imagine,
you do not need to give them a bit more credit than that. England can only beat what are in front of them. It's tournament football. It doesn't matter who you're drawn against. They beat Croatia, World Cup finalists last time out in their first match. They beat the Czech Republic, who ended up going well into the competition.
They've not been a superpower.
Germany are a superpower.
And I acknowledge that they're a fading superpower, but I'm just saying that they haven't.
And they beat them well. They beat them well.
They're coming up again. They haven't come up against anybody yet in two tournaments, for me, that I would say, okay, fair enough, you guys are truly world class. Their group wasn't blistering. They weren't amazing. They kind of came out of it. There was still an awful lot of questions being asked. By the way, I'm pleased for England, and I'm delighted that they're doing well. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world in my book to see them win it. But I'm just saying, watching it, they're not the complete article yet. They're not a million miles away. Or they're not like what you're making them out to be. They're not perfect just yet. They're decent, but they're not up there just yet for me.
Where's the weaknesses then? Like, if you're the Danish manager heading into this game, like, you look at the 4-0, and maybe, as Nathan mentioned, Ukraine are just brutal, and you have to kind of assess the opposition on their merits. But, like, if you're the Danish manager, what sort of areas are you targeting in this England team?
It's very difficult, because it's very difficult to know what he's going to do. I mean, if you're preparing for England, it's very, very difficult to pin down what they're going to be. They could be any one of minimum 4 shapes or players. It's very difficult to pin it down. So I think the Danish team coming into it, there'll be a lot of questions. And the first 30 seconds of the game, the manager is going to be scanning that pitch very, very quickly to figure out exactly what they're doing. Granted, when the team sheets come in and out before kickoff, they'll be looking at it, and the analysts will be pretty certain to say, look, okay, they're going with pace and wingers, they're going with wing backs, or they're going with, Jordan Henderson might come into the team to start. I'm not sure. So it's very, very difficult and unnerving to a certain extent to kind of pin this England team down. And that's one thing that Gareth Southgate deserves an awful lot of credit for. Is that he has made this team, the players, extremely comfortable bouncing from one formation to another. It's something that's very, very difficult to achieve. And I think he spent the best part of 2 years because sometimes when players are hit with a curveball or a shape that they're not used to, a certain amount of nerves or panic or uncertainty will creep in, and that will show up in the performance. And, the thing can fall apart very, very quickly. But this team seemed very, very adaptable, that he throws 3 at the back and the players just kind of shrug their shoulders again, no problem. We know exactly what's required now. He goes 4 with 2 sitters, or he wants to go with pace, or he wants to play with the 3 number 10s. All the players just seem very, very adaptable, and that's a fabulous place for them to be. But weaknesses... I'd say
the keeper a weakness still? I know he hasn't conceded, but the couple of moments he had to had to do something on Saturday night. Ooh, it was nervy.
You'd be talking about that. You'd be saying, let's get him under pressure. Let's try and get some crosses in the box. Let's get some shots away early, and just see what kind of place he's in and ask him some questions. And, he is a decent goalkeeper, but if you ask him enough questions and the law of averages, he's going to get more than a couple wrong.
Like I mentioned at the start, the fact that Paddy Power are giving this money to Irish football for every goal England score, and all of a sudden they've 8 goals in this tournament yet to concede. Like Harry Kane especially, Damien, like got a lot of flack for the first few games for his performances generally, not just the fact that he wasn't hitting the back of the net, but does this show the quality of the man, the fact that he's able to come through? And you wouldn't again put it past him scoring another couple against Denmark.
It shows his mentality, the type of guy that he is, because to be under the pressure that he was under and to have people like Alan Shearer calling him out after the group stage, being the captain, being the main man, and you're not scoring, and people are always only looking for holes or flaws in the England team, and when you're kind of the whipping boy for a period of time, it can be very, very difficult. But it shows the amount of self-belief he has and the confidence that he has to stay focused, to keep getting in the right positions, keep waiting for the chances to come along, because he is a world-class player, and I'm sure he knows that, and he just needs to wait for the right chance to come along at the right time, and he will take it. But that can be very, very difficult when the spotlight is on you. You can start questioning yourself. You can start maybe doing things differently as opposed to just doing what you believe in. So, look, he's a world-class player, and he was always going to come good. And I don't think there was ever any doubt. I think it was you and me had a discussion. You were advocating for Calvert-Lewin. I think you said to me a couple of weeks ago, saying, where does Calvert-Lewin sit when he's on the bench? Can he be complaining? And I think I remarked to you that Calvert-Lewin is always going to stay on the bench because Harry Kane is Harry Kane, and he's always going to come good. And when Southgate came out after that game and said, no, he's our guy, of course Southgate knew that he just needed to remain patient with him and almost give him that public reassurance to take a little bit of pressure off him.
It's incredible that England used 16 players, won 4-0 against Ukraine, and Phil Foden and Jack Grealish didn't even get off the bench. They've both made fleeting appearances in the tournament so far. Grealish probably with more of an impact than Foden. When you look at the way Denmark set up and the potential again for Southgate to make 1 or 2 changes in every game, do you see either of those coming into the reckoning for a place in the starting 11?
I don't know. I mean, like, Denmark are obviously a very, very tight, hard-working unit. He's obviously settled on his back four. I mean, Trippier might come in. I don't think he will really. I think if they got to the final, you might see Trippier left back and a more solid-looking team. I think he seems to have settled on Rice and Phillips, definitely. So they're defending with 6 and attacking with 4. But I think he might go with the number 10s. I think he might go with Sterling, Mount and Grealish, because with the way Denmark play, it's very, very difficult to get in behind them. It's very, very difficult to get down the sides of them. It's very, very difficult to break them down unless you're very, very clever. So I think he'll go with the clever players as opposed to the pace that he went with against Ukraine. Starting Sancho. He obviously realised that you can get at the Ukrainians in pace. They won't be able to live with it. Because I think the Danish team will be so compact that the pacey players will find it difficult to find the green grass they're looking for to run into. But what they will need to find out, they will need to do to kind of unsettle them, is to find the little pockets of space. So I could imagine something along the lines of, I think Sterling is obviously going to play because he is their one thread in behind. But I would imagine Grealish and Mount or Foden, one or the other. That's what I would look, and I'd say Shaw will start at left back because he's had a decent tournament. But if they get to the final against Italy, then I think you might see a different type of team.
We spoke there about Harry Kane's mentality a moment ago, and like you mentioned Luke Shaw there, and for some time in this England team he was behind Ben Chilwell in this pecking order and didn't start the opener against Croatia. Kieran Trippier got the nod at left back instead. But look at Luke Shaw now. I mean, talk about mentality and all the stick he's had over the years, including the stick from Jose Mourinho at Manchester United, and the 2 assists he had at the weekend were crucial. And he's, as you said, had a great tournament. He's just someone who seems to, I guess, take criticism on the chin.
Well, I think he's been through an awful lot, and I think that there's a certain strength can be taken when you've been through as much as he has and you're still standing. And obviously he's got a little bit of love from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, kind of give him a little bit of confidence back. I mean, he was always a wonderful, wonderful player. I mean, he moved at such a young age for such big money. and he moved away from home. I know that he was a homeboy, still living with his mum and all that, and then he goes up to Manchester, and he probably found life a little bit difficult, and he probably didn't need a coach like Jose Mourinho, a direct, in-your-face type of coach when you're trying to find yourself as a person and as a player. But he has come through that, and he's come through that with flying colours, and I think there probably is a strength in him now that realises there's nothing that can break me, and he's certainly playing that way, and he looks very, very happy. He looks very, very confident at the moment, and he's had a fabulous, fabulous tournament. But again, would I be surprised if Ben Chilwell started? I wouldn't. Not because of anything that Luke Shaw did. I mean, just because of Southgate seems to have this way of he just throws in these odd team selections, and everyone. I mean, you think of the game against where he picked against Germany, where he picked basically 7 defenders, and everyone was like screaming at him, and he came through the game. So he does seem to have a handle on this team. So, Luke Shaw has had a great tournament, and he's rebuilt his career unbelievably well. And he's in a good place, regardless of what happens.
Is it possible that Gareth Southgate's a genius?
Oh, listen, I think I've had discussion with you lads. I think he has something, yeah, really. I mean, that Germany game was such a huge risk, colossal risk, to pick 7 defenders and just almost kind of hope that they keep Germany at bay and go on and win the game. But look, he seems to have a handle on this team. He seems to have a way of analysing opposition, and he's utilising everything at his disposal, whether it's 3 at the back, all formations and different types of players. Obviously, if he gets it wrong and, he picks a team against Denmark and he, they're obviously baying for certain players to be in the team, and he kind of withstood that in the group stage. But if he doesn't start certain players and they lose, I don't think he'll be able to set foot in England again. And that is the fine line between genius and lunatic.
Well, he does seem to have an emotional intelligence as well, in that he has a connection with these players. And maybe it is that victory papers over any cracks. And if England were to lose to Denmark, we'll hear that actually, Calvert-Lewin was raging that he didn't even make the squad for the Germany game, and that, Ben Chilwell's not even in the squad for the match against Ukraine, that there are cracks there. But the dynamic of dressing room and how difficult it is to keep, particularly players with egos the size of, sure, these England players, to keep them all happy. How big an achievement, and do you believe what you're seeing? Do you look at that England team and go, actually that is a very united camp?
Yeah, I think it's a very united camp, and I think the most important thing is the players really like the manager and they really trust him, and I think that's something that he's built over the last number of years. He probably has a really, really good way. A lot of those players he might have had at under 21 level, and he does seem to have an affinity or a bond with a lot of the players. And he's very, very calm. He's handling things. He is growing on me. I always thought he was very good. But the ways, after games in the interviews, he speaks really, really well. And, he doesn't, come out with a load of BS, and try and, play things down. He comes out and he says, yeah, we played well. We're a good team, but we've got a little bit to go. And there's an honesty to him. And I think the players really, really appreciate that. And that's what the players like with him. So when the players like and respect the manager and they're getting results, then I won't say it's an easy job, but it makes his job a whole lot easier than if they're, not doing so well in games and certain players aren't playing. But I think a lot of the players now are on board and they've bought into it and they've accepted that, sometimes I'm going to play, sometimes I'm not. I think if Luke Shaw starts or doesn't start in the semi-final, I still think he's going to be in a really good place, show up the training and the group's going to be pretty happy. And that's something that the manager has built, and he deserves an awful lot of credit for that.
We've a couple of comments in on the YouTube channel. Keep them coming in, by the way. Shane O'Reilly says, we've been to Wembley, then to Rome and back to Wembley. Doesn't have quite the same catchiness as the Liverpool chant or original Rotterdam song. Definitely not as catchy as the Beautiful South tune. Larry Jerry on YouTube, Damien makes the point. As Mike Tyson said, everything changes when you are punched in the face. England have not really been tested in the finals so far. Yes, that's a fair point.
That's a very valid point, and that was what I was trying to say at the start of the show, is that they've had a nice run and they've dealt with everything that they've had, and it is true. If they come up against Denmark and they go a goal behind, what kind of mettle have they got? We've seen with Italy, in the Austria game, it was Austria took them to extra time. Someone took them to extra time.
Yeah, Austria. Yeah.
And they showed that real determination to get it over the line, and they, even when they fall behind, they're a really, really good unit. And Italy have proven that to a certain extent. A big test for them coming up now against the Spanish team. But again, I don't think England have been, he says punch in the face. They haven't been on the canvas yet, not to get up from a 10 count. So we'll have to.
They may not be.
They may not be.
The way tournament football goes, they may find a way through this, and they may not get the smack in the face.
Absolutely, and they could get to the final, and everybody could just be in gear. But you're dead right. But I just think that they will. It's very rare you'll come through a tournament as blissfully happy as what England are coming through at the moment. I'd be shocked, but it's possible. But Gareth Southgate has had a very, very nice run in both tournaments, and I think that in once we get out of this tournament before the Qatar World Cup, I think a lot of England fans will look back and say we will never in our lives get a better opportunity to win 2 tournaments in the World Cup in Russia and the Euros. No, they failed at Russia by getting beat by Croatia. I mean, if they fail this, I don't think they'll ever have a run to a final like they've had now. So this is their opportunity if they're ever going to do it.
Jadon Sancho is another man we mentioned there, Damien, and I guess Manchester United fans will be quite excited to see what he can bring. And look, at £73 million, you would hope he would bring something. And he was fairly decent against Ukraine. 21 years of age, still plenty of time left in his career. But some people criticising maybe his lack of tracking back defensively in the game against Ukraine. But then, granted, they were playing quite poor opposition. But going forward, very, very dangerous.
Absolutely, and his numbers hold up. You look at his statistics over the last number of years. He won a trophy this year with Dortmund. So, I mean, he is a player on an upward trajectory. He's very, very well thought of. And listen, anytime you bring in a player of that quality, it's going to improve your squad. So, your fans can be very, very happy. But he's still got to go to a club like Manchester United and fulfil that potential, because without being too dour or disrespectful, Manchester United have signed an awful lot of players that haven't gone on. When you think of Lukaku and Depay and people like that, so it's not a slam dunk yet. So he's got to go to Manchester and improve the squad, and it gives Manchester United huge options. Rashford can now move over to the left hand side, and there's talk of Greenwood playing down the middle to supplement Cavani. So that is a pretty good looking forward line. A lot of pace and a lot of energy.
Don't get him started on United.
I know. I that was complimentary there, though.
Okay. You're setting them up for a fall.
No, that's fair. So that's England, Denmark then. That's Wednesday night at 8 p.m. in Wembley. But as you mentioned, Italy, Spain tomorrow night, 8 p.m. in Wembley as well. And like the Belgium game, the Italians were again impressive. They had the bit of shithousery towards the end, the last 10 or 15 minutes, as they normally do defensively. But really, another impressive game. Like Spinazzola's injury is a massive blow, and that's not just missing the rest of the tournament. That's a big blow for his club Roma as well, because he'll be out for 5 or 6 months. Is that a massive blow for Italy, or can they just bypass that?
I think they'll bypass it. I think once a team is in the mode that they're in, and they are moving at a huge pace now, and they have momentum, I think that whoever comes in there, the weight of that momentum, or the weight of the team will they'll just minor speed bump for them, and they'll just keep going. But they're a team that are in a really good place. It's theirs to lose, really. When you look at they have a certain look about them, Italy, and I know people say that carry on at the end was brutal, but believe me, in a major tournament, it's just what you're looking for. The goalkeeper going down, taking off his glove, Chiellini giving winks to crowds. I mean, that is just the ultimate team getting it over the line. They're in such a good place, full of experienced professionals, serious youth. I think there's 7 or 8 players under the age of 24 on the squad, a manager that clearly has a steeliness to him, and they are the ones to beat for me. They were my tip before the start of the tournament. Mancini really does look like he has a devilish look in his eye. Every time the camera cuts to him, you just think, oh, you wouldn't mess with him. And he has a real handle on the squad as well. And for me, they're the ones. I think they will come through the Spanish test. I think they will run right over the top of the Spanish team. Their physicality, their dynamism, their work rate, their togetherness. I think they'll smother Spain. They won't let Spain get in a rhythm. I think Spain have done well to get this far. They've been unconvincing. I don't want to say they've limped to get this far, but they haven't, been amazing. I know the Slovakia result, they won 5-0, but you can always tell by looking at them, there's something not quite right. And now they're coming up against this serious outfit. And I think they're going to be asked questions, and they will not have the answers for it. This Spanish team are just going to steamroll over the top of Spain, and by the looks of it, meet England in the final. But my prediction still stands firm that I think Denmark might do a job on England as well.
Did you enjoy, as a defender, the celebrations from, I think it was Chiellini and Bonucci when they blocked that late Romelu Lukaku shot? Like, that was the passion in their faces. I guess it's not a surprise to see passionate Italians, but they looked like they'd celebrated a goal. They were just they bring a life and a zest to this tournament that we all needed.
Yeah, and they bring they have a feeling when you watch them and you just think, oh, you wouldn't want to play them. You know, I think anyone that's playing the Italians now is just going to look at it and just thinking, they're going to smother us. It's going to be really, really difficult. And if we hit them, they're going to get back up again and keep coming. And they have a steeliness to them. And it's built on essentially those two at the back. I mean, you know, they have a midfield that's full of legs and energy and hustle and bustle. And if you get past that midfield, you must look at them two pillars and you must think, oh, for God's sake, I don't have to go up against them now. And they are brilliant, in fairness. I know a lot of people don't like those types of defenders that are just going down injured, feigning injury, but they are as old school as you're going to get. I mean, they really are. They're straight out of the 1980s type defenders, you know, blood and guts. So I think they're brilliant. You know, the modern day defender, everyone wants to play and pass, and those lads know their job. It's basically get the ball, give it to the better players, and then wait for the next attack that comes their way and put their bodies on the line. And that is their mentality. And every team needs someone like that. And those two guys are brilliant.
Depending on which team you're supporting, like there are few greater sights in sport than a team indulging in all-out shithousery. Like, I had a vested interest in Belgium on Friday night, and I literally nearly threw something at the TV in the last 10 minutes where I'd lost all sense of reason. Send them off. This is a disgrace to the game. It is an outrage. The Italians should be thrown out. And then in hindsight, look and go, oh my God, it's just so... Every part of it is so brilliant. Were you a man who indulged in a bit of shithousery? And if not, who were the greats that you would have gone up against that? Just wasting a bit of time, going to ground.
It's brilliant. Like when you come up against it, and it breaks your heart if you're losing 1-0 in injury time, and they take the ball in the corner, and then they kind of try and flick it off your shins, and it hits your shins and goes out for a throw in. They set the whole thing up again. And your desperation and your impatience comes in, and then you end up giving away a foul, and they're really, really happy. And you know how it plays out, when in reality, you should just let them come out of the corner and take the ball off them, and chances are they're not going to go for a second attack anyway. But, your desperation gets the better of you. And when you see fellas going down injured, and especially when they're kind of winking at the crowd, and you might see that, and you're like telling the referee, and the referee's screaming at you saying, "What do you mean he's injured?" I said, "He's not injured." And then you realise, what am I doing? Arguing. So not only does it waste time, but it just absolutely accelerates the desperation of the team that needs a goal. And then you end up lumping balls forward, or you end up kind of, not the same quality that you should do because you're just panicked, really. So all in all, it's not a nice place to be. But when you're winning the game, you're going down holding your face several times. If a cross comes in the box late and you head it out, you go down holding your face, knowing that the referee has to stop the game if it's a head injury. So all that type of carry-on goes on. When you're on the receiving end of it, it's not very nice, as you said there, Nathan. But everybody does it when you're winning 1-0 in injury time. It's always going to happen.
Yeah, the Ciro Immobile one, when he waited until the goal was scored before getting up completely not injured, was taking the piss a bit, but it was kind of funny. The Italians get away with it. It's almost a lovable rogue that you kind of enjoy. A couple of comments on the YouTube as well. One Love says, plenty of Irish influence in the English team. Someone else disagrees. No Irish influence. Grealish and Rice are English men. We won't get into that. Easy Ollie says, this fella in the middle smiling at everything slightly bad, Damien says, with England. He's going to be sick when it comes home. I'm not smiling at everything bad that England... I like this England team. Nathan mentioned at the top that they're quite a likeable team. It's just... I really do not want them to win this tournament. That's...
really?
I think that English... that debate will be one that we'll go back to again and again, though, because, yes, I understand the frustration of an awful lot of people where Declan Rice is literally kissing the jersey and playing for the senior team and then goes off and does the exact same thing for England. But Declan Rice's ancestors, Jack Grealish, Harry Kane, they all left Ireland because Ireland didn't want them. They left because there was no jobs, because they had no life in this country and had no choice but to go to England. So they are of Irish heritage. And while in a sporting sense, we may not cheer them on, or we may be annoyed that they're not playing for Ireland, these are second, third, fourth generation Irish who may not always acknowledge it. That is part of their history. And, we should acknowledge it and say, okay, I don't know if we'd be proud of them or what they've achieved, but it is part of them, and it is something we should talk about.
Totally. I think people take it up the wrong way when Irish people smirk and laugh at England losing, and I'm one of them. I'll hold my hands up. I smirk and laugh when England lose, and I did it when they lost to Iceland in 2016. But it's a rivalry thing. You're allowed to have footballing rivalries. It's not a political thing. It's just kind of funny when England lose.
But Shane, you're supposed to be a rivalry when you're playing against someone. We're nowhere near them. We're on the periphery.
Well,
looking
you were.
And I just think that would it be, but even now in this tournament, I think they are a likeable team. The players all seem like really likeable guys. It's not like the England teams of past where there maybe was some characters you didn't like. The manager was somebody that you didn't particularly think was great. The media weren't, brilliant. And I get all those factors. But now the media seem to be on board. Gareth Southgate seems to be in control of everything that's going on. All the players seem like really bright, smart, enjoyable lads who have fun and seem to enjoy playing for their country, and they don't seem to be frozen by the pressure that maybe other teams were. And none of the baggage seems to be with this England team. So I get what you mean. It's a rivalry, but realistically, wouldn't it be nice just to? I know some people will never get over that, but I mean, would it be the end of the world if England won it? Wouldn't we be able to just kind of enjoy it for them, and do you think that the country of England would just erupt and the absolute ideas of grandeur and delusion would be fantastic?
No, not having it, Damien.
Yeah. Listen, there are certain English people I would be happy for. There are other English people who will probably take over the celebration, so I definitely wouldn't be happy for.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. No, it's all fair points, to be fair. You mentioned Belgium there, disappointing again. We had Eamon Dunphy on the show on Friday, Damien, and he was calling Roberto Martinez a spoofer. This is a team that's ranked number 1 in the world, back 3, I think, with an average age of 33. There was only 2 players in that starting 11 the last day against Italy, younger than 28. This is a so-called golden generation that has failed to live up to any expectations. They haven't even reached a final at a major tournament. So, fairly disappointing potential end for this golden generation. Yeah,
I think that's they need to move on now. There needs to be clear out, I suppose. As you said, there are a lot of players that maybe need to be kind of ushered towards the exit door, really. I don't know what their pipeline of young players coming through are. I presume it's pretty good. Whether Roberto Martinez is a spoofer or not, that is the fine line. They were ranked number 1 in the world for so long. I still think his record is something like only 4 or 5 defeats in 70 games, something in and around that. So, I mean, he's not a spoofer, but he just hasn't quite got it over the line. And there are really, really fine margins. Both tournaments they've come up against, elite teams that are in a really good place, and they've just come up short. I mean, even in the Italy game, there was an argument to be made. They had enough chances to at least, get to extra time possibly, if not win it. So, they weren't wiped out by Italy. Italy beat them. It was a good game. They competed really, really well, but they just came up short, as they did in the World Cup in 2018. So, spoofer is probably a touch harsh, but Eamon can say that, obviously. But I just think that, time for a clear out and a rebuild, really, for Belgium.
There's definitely a big element of Martinez that is that modern coach that you can see why people would see he's a bit of a spoofer. But when you talk about the golden generation, Eden Hazard didn't play, wasn't in the squad because he was injured and has had a terrible couple of years. So arguably the greatest of the golden generation that Hazard might have been hasn't really been available to Martinez. And when he did play in this tournament, he looked brilliant. Kevin De Bruyne has had lumps kicked out of him over the last couple of months. Again, I thought on Friday night at times was outstanding, but couldn't have been fully fit. So he was massively hampered. I was really disappointed with their midfield, Damien, on Friday night. And in fact, throughout the tournament, Tielemans in particular, who I thought had a brilliant season for Leicester, against Portugal and against the Italians, just couldn't control the game at all, himself and Axel Witsel. Couldn't grab a hold of it, calm things down, get them into a rhythm. Both matches became very, very helter-skelter, which didn't seem to suit Belgium at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Witsel as well, they weren't quite the... I watched them in the Nations League and in a couple of qualifiers, and them two have been I think when they played England there not so long ago, I thought them two dominated the midfield, and they weren't quite at it, I agree. But I think the back four is ageing and maybe perhaps not as dominant as what they once were, which puts a certain amount of pressure on the midfield. So maybe that's a mitigating factor. And of course, Hazard missing is very, very difficult. But I'm not sure. Is Martinez still contracted there for the World Cup in Qatar? Is there any murmurings of maybe them moving on?
Well, I think that is one of the big debates around a few of the managers, is that there's such a short lead-in time now to the World Cup, and Belgium are already well on the way through the qualifiers. That is now the time to rip it up and start again. Maybe there's necessity with Belgium with the defenders, but even on the spoofer line, who else is there in international management? It's not as if international management is brimming with great managers, that good club managers are thinking, you know what, I'd like a nice handy spell of 18 months in international management. You're sort of stuck with people who are out of job because they failed at club level right now. So, hey, who is that guy for Belgium? Maybe there's somebody internally who's been waiting for the chance, but wouldn't be surprised at all if Martinez ended up staying on for the World Cup.
Yeah, I think they probably will keep him on, but it wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be the worst thing if they had a change of voice. He's had 2 tournaments now. There'll be a huge amount of pressure on him. There'll be a certain amount of negativity in the Belgian press. I would have thought that this golden generation have kind of failed these last 2 tournaments when really they should have at least got to a final of one of them. So that brings a certain amount of negativity, and one way to alleviate all that is to just get a fresh voice in, especially if we're going to have a kind of a changeover of players, getting in some new guys, ushering some guys towards retirement. It can be difficult for Martinez to do that because he has relationships with a lot of these older players, and he won't want to just move them on because he has a certain feeling for them. So it wouldn't be the end of the world for me if Belgium just went in another direction. It wouldn't be. But like you said, the short turnaround, he's under contract, who's out there, they might let him roll into it. But I mean, I can't see them doing any damage in Qatar, like any at all.
Might just briefly touch on Spain, Damien, before that game tomorrow night. Of course, the Italians up next for them. Like some extraordinary stats in front of me here. Spain have had 69 more attacks than any other team in the tournament, 235 more attacks than England, and yet, like, if you look at all their goals, 12 goals in their tournament so far, 5 of them came against Slovakia, granted, but they're still quite wasteful in front of goal. They had so many chances against Switzerland, and the reality is Alvaro Morata and even Gerard Moreno, when he came on, just were quite wasteful, and that ruthlessness in front of goal may be something that they might come to regret against Italy.
Yeah, and as well as that, I just, that what you said there was quite correct, but I just feel there's a flimsiness to Spain when I watch them, that no one's, they've come through some decent games and they've had to win, and they've won on penalties, but they're kind of just winging it for me at the moment. They don't look like they're free-flowing. They don't look as dominant as what they have been, or maybe what they should be. And I just think once you apply a certain team to apply the right amount of pressure, you'll get the right answers against Spain. I think they will get beat by Italy, as I said, because Italy are just a juggernaut at the moment. Listen, they're a fantastic team, and obviously they play some nice football, and they've got some young, exciting players. But I think they're building now for Qatar. And they've done really well to get this far. I don't think a lot of, maybe in Spain, there was a lot of kind of unrest with the selection and leaving out certain players and going in a certain direction. And I think that was aimed at building towards Qatar. I think they realised that they maybe didn't have what it takes to win this tournament. And getting to the semi-final is a huge bonus. And those young players and that new direction now was given kind of a firm footing for them moving forward. But look, anything can happen in 90 or 120 minutes of football, or even penalties against Italy, of course. But all things being equal, I think that Italy will come through that tie.
Damien, I just wanted to get your thoughts as well on the fact that the 4 teams left in the competition had all 3 of their group games at home, which clearly now, looking back in hindsight, is certainly an advantage. And there was a great quote from Mark Ogden of ESPN talking about this home advantage, and he said Switzerland clocked up more than 7,000 miles, while England have basically spent 4 weeks at home, apart from what turned out to be a nice R&R weekend in Rome. So there's a definite, this multi-venue format for me, I've quite enjoyed it, but maybe having a tournament in one place adds more of an atmosphere. I don't know what your thoughts on the tournament from that perspective has been. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think, the comfort of England being at home, not having to face a hostile atmosphere. I'm sure there's been periods, when you're away in camp that, the players might have been given 2 days off to go home to their houses, to their partners, to their kids, or whoever they're going home to. And that helps, because they're only a 2-hour drive away from their house, or an hour drive away. St. George's Park is pretty much bang in the middle of the country. So, a lot of players won't be more than 2 hours from home. So a lot of lads would have had time off, after training one day. The manager might say, hey, look, we're going to train at lunchtime tomorrow. So that's 24 hours. You guys are free now to to go and do your own thing. Obviously, be careful and mind your own business, and that helps in a huge way, as opposed to being away in Italy in a pre-tournament training camp where you're cooped up in a hotel and stuff. So, look, I think it definitely has an advantage, a familiarity of being at home as well, going to Wembley. You're very, very comfortable with the routine leading up to it. I think that, the day before the game, the players leave St. George's and they go down to the Grove Hotel in Watford, which is, half an hour from Wembley. So there's a familiarity with that there, and they just stay in their rooms, and then they know the route, the feeling driving up Wembley Way, and the changing room. So obviously there's a comfort level comes with that. I'm not a fan of the way the tournament has panned out. I think it should be a level playing field for everybody, and certainly playing in your home stadium is an advantage. I'm not saying it's the be-all and end-all, but it certainly is an advantage. And as I said there, the teams, you look at Denmark against Wales, the Dutch government stopped, Welsh fans travelling to Amsterdam, whereas the Danish fans could just drive across the border. So I think that's just a touch unfair in my book.
Even more in these COVID times as well, where every time you leave the country, the amount of rules and regulations and tests that have to be done. You say for the English players to just drive back up the motorway, up to St. George's Park, back into the same hotel room they were in, could leave all their stuff, all their computers, name it, all there, ready, waiting for them. Like, the ease and the lack of hassle compared to what everyone else has gone through must be a massive boost. Huge,
and everything you said there is right. No checking in and out of hotels, as you said. You're going back to your room after the game, the way you left it 2 days ago, and you're in the same bed in the same room, and you get a nice little routine going. So I agree, it's a huge benefit that England have had, and they've certainly taken advantage of it. And everything has been in place for England to win this tournament, and they really have to go on and win it now. They will not get a better opportunity.
Damien, great stuff as always. We'll check in again. I think you're on with us next Monday, so we'll go back over the tournament in its entirety and, of course, the final. So,
and your final team of the tournament might settle down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it could be just 11 Italians, hopefully, by the end of it. Maybe a couple of Danes thrown in there as well. But Damien, great stuff as always. Thanks a million for that this morning.
Thanks.
Great stuff. Damien Delaney there, the former Irish international, and, of course, Crystal Palace defender as well, and Premier League star. We'll get your predictions, Nathan, in just a second. We've been having this table throughout the duration of the tournament, myself, yourself and Jer, and I'm just looking at the latest scores here now, so you probably don't want to hear this, but myself on 23 points, Jer 20 and yourself on 18. We're going to make it a little bit more interesting though. No predictions today, of course, but to keep it interesting, we will look for exact score predictions as well for the final 3 games, 2 semis, the final. So 1 point for the correct team to win, and you'll get an extra point for the correct score. If you say it was on penalties, you'll get that extra point as well. So this is more of a pity rule made up by our producer Dahi, because you're down the bottom. Because
no. You see, what you're doing is you're just going by the scores. If you were to have looked at the odds, I'd say I got the big results right. You took the safe route all the time.
Right. Okay, I disagree. I mean, I went for a draw in Spain-Sweden when you lads went for Spain. That's a brave choice on my behalf that came up trumps. But I don't know. It sounds like excuses.
Look, I got the Czechs to beat the Dutch is what I'm living off.
Fair. Like Jer made the point to me off air one day that he just wants to beat you. He has no interest in coming first. He just does not want to finish last. So that kind of shows where his head is at. You're in his head, Nathan.
He's obsessed.
So it sounds like you're going for an England-Italy final as well. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to say Italy after extra time. And England in normal time. England to win 3-1.
3-1. I just want an England penalty shootout. I want to see Gareth Southgate in the huddle.
Oh, I'd love it.
Just trying to give advice on how to hit penalties when clearly he's not the man to go to for advice on how to hit penalties. It's going to be excellent. Listen, I can't wait for the games. So tomorrow night, Italy, Spain and Wembley, 8 o'clock, and then Wednesday, of course, 8 p.m. as well for England against Denmark. Nathan, great stuff as always this morning.
Cheers, Shane.
Thanks a million. Nathan Murphy there with us. That is the Euro 2020 show again for this Monday morning on Off the Ball, live in association with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euro. So those 8 goals so far mean €80,000 for Irish football. So perhaps they'll add a few more to that number against the Danes on Wednesday night. If you missed any of the show this morning, and as always, the full podcast will be up very shortly. OTB Sports app is where you'll get that. You can download that, as I said at the start, from the App Store or the Play Store. It's also up on youtube.com/off the ball in full video as well. We'll also be sure to have plenty of clips and the usual highlights and best bits on our Twitter and Instagram at Off the Ball, and myself on Twitter at ShaneHannon01. I'll be back tomorrow, Tuesday morning from 11 a.m. ahead of Spain-Italy in the company of our own Colin Buhig, the first semi-final. So I can't wait for that. So same time, same place tomorrow morning. We'll speak to you then. Have a good one.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. England's goals total 80k so far for Irish football. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.